will be undertaking. Last year, Property Services 2 did an evaluation of our own and leased buildings. They assessed over 76 locations where we deliver our programs and services. What they found are deficiencies or areas to improve around accessible path of travels, routes, counters, door handles, restrooms, and just countertops, and just the overall physical location. What they have is known as an ADA transition plan, which is more the traditional aspect of what an ADA plan is for local government agencies. And they will be embarking on their own timeline to make sure that they physically modify and fix barriers to participation over the next few years as well. For Public Works in 2012, they conducted an evaluation of our right-of-ways and streets. They assessed over 15,000 right-of-ways and pedestrian ramps, I believe. And what they developed from that was a transition plan that they have been operating off of since 2013. And what they're going to be embarking on for 2017 is updating that plan to include city streets and sidewalks, as well as developing priorities, policies, and approaches to sidewalk gaps and maintenance and snow removal, and making sure that they update their plan to meet a lot of the current standards and procedures right now. Chair Gordon, council members, that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll see if there's any comments or questions, and then we'll take public comment. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know I've mentioned it before to the department as well, specifically around captioning and the advancement of technology in this space and how that might disrupt plans around hiring or vendor selection or such. And as it turns out, since I last mentioned this, on October 17th, history was made. For the first time, there have been reports now, this is from Microsoft, NVIDIA, that human parity has been reached with the ability of technology to recognize speech and translate it as effective as humans do. So first time in history. And this is obviously a huge advancement. And I know over the coming years, it's going to be integrated ultimately into the different technology areas and systems. And so I could certainly see programs like, or web apps like YouTube, for instance, integrating this type of technology where it can automatically translate as well as a human, automatically caption as well as a human. So I really hope that we're keeping our eyes on that with this plan and with these milestones set out here so that we know where the technology is going to be before we start spending money on vendors and programs and hiring folks, when by the time we get through all of that and it's implemented, very likely the technology will already be there and built in to the products and services we're already using, so that we can ultimately have as good of captioning as technologically possible out there. And so that's just my strong encouragement. I know I've given it before, but I want to keep repeating it because I think it's really important stuff. We know that, especially these days, technology is advancing so quickly, and it's important for us to have our eyes wide open on that and see where we're headed and where things are coming up. Realistically, of course, when that happens, we're not going to have flying cars next year. I understand that, but you know, we need to be looking at these and factoring these things into our policy decisions. So I look forward to continuing that conversation with you as that technology rolls out.
I appreciate that. I just hope that we look carefully at who's judging the technology and make sure that we aren't taking the vendor's word for it, but we're listening to and communicating with people who actually need to use and want to use and rely on the captioning and that technology going forward. But appreciate that. I don't see any other comments or questions right now. So then why don't we open it for public comments? Is there just, who all wanted to come and speak? Okay. In that case, we'll give you an unlimited amount of time. Feel free to take the next 90 minutes. No, just kidding.
I'll try to take it all. Thank you very much. Chair Gordon, council members, my name is David Fenley. I live in the Kingfield neighborhood of Ward 8. I am also the vice chair of the Minneapolis Advisory Commission, Committee on People with Disabilities. Ken Rogers regrets not being able to make it today, but I'm here to express our gratitude to NCR staff and to council members for working with us to create a very robust ADA action plan. We are pleased with it. Of course, we would like to see timelines shortened, but we're fundamentalists when it comes to this type of thing, and we know that there are limited resources, and it's being spent, across the board to make our city more equitable for all of its residents, more inclusive for all of its residents, and this is a major part of that. 2 quick points, actually 3 quick points. First, Councilmember Johnson, we may not have flying cars next year, but we very might have self-driving cars next year. So that's a major technology jump for people with disabilities. 2 more serious notes. The Americans with Disabilities Act is really the baseline. It really is the starting point from which we then move forward and create a more inclusive city. So we just want to make sure that that meeting the Americans with Disabilities Act is not, oh yeah, we're going to be compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act. That's a given. If you're not, you're breaking the law. The second point would be on the terms of equity, diversity, and inclusion. I always like to say that disability does not discriminate. Disability cuts across all demographic groups. It cuts across all socioeconomic statuses, and anybody at any time can become a member of people with disabilities. A good example of this is it's timely that the green zones was up before me, but that disability can fall more heavily on historically disenfranchised communities, and that's it's statistic proof in both asthma and diabetes rates among children who live in zones that are environmentally injustice to their group. So, in closing, I just wanted to thank all of you and as well NCR again for working with us to make sure that our city is more inclusive and equitable to all of its residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here, taking your time to come and make those comments. Now, I'm going to move approval of the 2017-2019 ADA Action Plan and see if there's any final discussion or questions on that. Seeing none, then, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. That motion carries. Congratulations. Now we'll move on to our next item, which is the 2015 Neighborhood Programs Annual Report. That's item number 8. And Robert Thompson, I believe, Stacy Sorensen and Michelle Chavez will be presenting. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Gordon and committee members. My name is Michelle Chavez, and I am a neighborhood support specialist with the Neighborhood and Community Relations Department at the City of Minneapolis, and I'm joined by my colleague, Stacy Sorensen.
Hi, I'm Stacy Sorensen. I'm also a neighborhood specialist with the Neighborhood and Community Relations Department, and we're here to present the 2015 Neighborhood Programs Annual Report, and this is a receive and file item. And I'll let Michelle start.
So first off, I'd just like to start off with our summary findings. You all should have a hard copy of this report in front of you today as well. Our summary findings for 2015, 70 organizations, all neighborhoods, reported in 2015 on their annual participation for the Community Participation Program. Approximately $6.8 million were expended through the Community Participation Program and the Neighborhood Revitalization Program contracts. Some trends that we've noticed through this report, trends throughout the neighborhood system, a lot more renter outreach and engagement across the city, a lot more collaboration between nonprofit agencies, advocacy groups, and other neighborhoods, partnership with external agencies to reach underrepresented groups, so partnerships with agencies such as Little Earth, Wait House, Juxtaposition Arts, Homeline, Mercado Central, and many more. We're seeing more and more neighborhoods partnering with each other. That is a trend that's continuing. So we have the Southside United Neighborhoods Group. We also have the Northside Neighborhood Council. There's a Northeast Tool Lending Library, for example. And also we have the Southwest Neighborhood Fix-It Fund, which is a group of several neighborhoods in Southwest collaborating together on that. We see increased collaboration with neighborhood community relations and regulatory services around housing issues. We see continual emphasis from our neighborhood groups on emphasis on self-improvement, both in how they run and also on their engagement outcomes. See an interest increased in environmental-related projects, housing-related issues, gentrification, healthy food, and healthy living. So we see all of our neighborhood groups are working on strategic planning, neighborhood priority setting, collaboration, and training for new board members. And another trend that we're also seeing is that many neighborhoods are hiring bilingual staff members to do outreach. So how does this neighborhood work get done? We asked neighborhoods a variety of questions through the annual reporting process, and one of those questions was, what do you do to reach underrepresented groups? And neighborhoods, they have a wide variety of strategies. A majority of neighborhoods did express that they do outreach to renters and that they meet specifically with different groups to address issues related to what's important to these underrepresented groups. One of the things that we've seen is outreach to the Latino community and the rental community, which is through neighborhoods like Lindale and Corcoran. Also, we've seen Northeast neighborhoods and Northside neighborhoods getting together to have renter forums where they have actually renters' rights events where people can come and hear and talk to professionals regarding their issues that they have across their communities. We see neighborhoods hiring, again, bilingual organizers. Several neighborhoods have Latina and Somali leadership programs where residents are able to learn how to be part of the neighborhood group and also learn how to run for their neighborhood boards. The next slide is a really basic overview of how neighborhoods accomplished projects and programs throughout the year of 2015. It also shows where the majority of the funds were expended. Approximately $4 million were expended on the community participation program as well as through setting neighborhood priorities through that program. Close to $3 million were spent on across other different strategies. As you can see, a large investment in housing programs, $1.6 million, as well as several different program areas and project areas, most popular being environment, community arts, crime prevention, parks, economic development, and transit. One of the things that is not in the slide but is in your report is on page 3. It talks about the different numbers and types of loan programs that were lent through the housing programs. And we also highlight the fact that the housing programs generated approximately $2.8 million in program income for the neighborhood groups.
Could you just talk a little bit more about what the neighborhood programs, the $3.9 million, what does that include?
Chair Gordon, committee members, that is the community participation program dollars, as well as setting dollars aside from that fund for neighborhood priorities. So that would be outreach and community engagement. It would be staffing, setting aside neighborhood money for projects. It would be their engagement activities they do on an annual basis and ongoing.
Okay, it might be interesting sometime to see. So part of that, it sounds like, goes to basic infrastructure and base level of capacity for the organization, rent maybe, or staff, and maybe some of that goes to projects where there's a little seed money, a couple $1,000s to make a mural. I'm not sure what the projects are. I made that up. But it might be interesting to know that a little more about that amount, how much is needed and being spent for that basic infrastructure, because some of that's community innovation program funding. Is that what we call it?
This is Chair Gordon. This is particularly community participation program dollars.
This is the CPP only, so it's almost all administrative.
Operations and funding, but they're allowed to set aside some of those dollars for neighborhood priorities, which are, again, more of the project-based work.
Okay, so there's a little bit of there, and I don't expect you to have that now, but I do see another. Did you have a question, Councilmember? Go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to understand this. So you've actually helped me a little bit, because understanding the source, as I understand it, the source is primarily there to support the infrastructure of the neighborhood, right? Which is the neighborhood. I'm assuming that's what the line item that says neighborhood programs means. And so that means that it's being spent in the way that we thought was being right-sized to meet the neighborhood association needs to kind of have an infrastructure in place that can do the work. And that housing programs I was interested in, I guess my mind was thinking more towards the NRP programs where there were requirements on how you spend your money, but you're saying this is part of the more flexible money where they could have chosen a bunch of other stuff. But clearly, if there was extra money, the majority of the spend was put towards housing programs. I guess that's what this is telling us. Is that it?
Chair Gordon, Councilmember Glidden, you are correct in that with the NRP dollars, the majority of those dollars did go into the housing programs. The first bar on this graph, that is particularly designated the community participation program dollars, and the rest of the bars are related to the neighborhood revitalization program dollars.
Oh, so these,
Yes.
this is part of the required
It's
spend then?
both, yes.
Okay, so that's what's maybe a little bit confusing, is that we have requirements around some funding sources, which are very old funding sources, and then we have different flexibility around kind of our newer ongoing sources with some identified purpose. Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Johnson also has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's really helpful to have this aggregate view of the different categories of where the money is ultimately being spent. I think it would be helpful to have even further depth, especially under the neighborhood programs, if we have some kind of high-level consistent categories or subcategories within that we could filter out, and to also be able to tie these different spending areas to outcomes kind of on a broad sense. You know, when we talk about how much money goes into engagement or outreach, how much can we quantify how much outreach is happening and try to get some more standards around reporting back? Because ultimately, I really like this annual report. By the way, ultimately, our neighborhood associations are doing a lot of great work out there, and I think that this helps share that story. And the more that we can show kind of the aggregate categories of where that money is being put to use in the community and then the results of it, I think all the better to share the success and the outcomes that are happening. So I just wanted to thank you first and foremost for including this aggregate information, and hopefully encourage you to see more of it in future reports and further develop that out. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, continue.
Thank you, Chair Gordon. Getting to what Councilmember Johnson just said, there's lots of different ways that this work gets done, and we try to create a vast array of ways of gathering this data for the city of Minneapolis. We want to make it so that we can find out exactly how that outreach is being done. So some of it is done through, holding regular meetings. We assess how door knocking is done. As you've seen in your report, the physical report has a lot of narrative. So we want to balance the data, the numbers with the narrative that also tells the larger story. Neighborhoods are trending to have, they have their regular meetings that they meet monthly and annually, but they're also trending towards having non-traditional meetings in areas that maybe they haven't had meetings before. One example is people are having meetings in apartment buildings. They're having meetings that are centered around coffee shops. They're meeting people where they're at rather than waiting for people to understand how to come to a traditional meeting. The third bar talks about how many neighborhoods had meetings in response to a city request. As you see, a majority of neighborhoods do hold meetings at a request of the city that goes beyond just their traditional meetings. And one of the things we want to point out is that not just the city requests meetings, but there are many different agencies that are requesting and utilizing our neighborhood systems. So neighborhoods are often called on by the county, the park board, the school district, Metro Transit, the University of Minnesota, the state of Minnesota, MnDOT, business owners and developers, and the list goes on in terms of the amount of requests that are given to neighborhood groups for them to help with community engagement and actually reaching out to our residents. So many of these agencies they're not actually directly funding these efforts, so they're benefiting from the city's investment in this system and allowing the neighborhoods to help them with their outreach. I'm going to turn it over now to my colleague Stacy Sorensen for the next few slides.
Thanks, Michelle. So community outreach is really a core of what the neighborhoods do, and door knocking is a big part of that. In 2015, neighborhood associations reached over 40,000 households in person. So that's, the households in person and above and beyond those that they're reaching through newsletters and so on. This work was accomplished mostly through volunteers. You can see from our slide, sorry about that, that about half of the work was done by neighborhood volunteers or in conjunction with volunteers and staff. We've often thought it'd be interesting to track on a monetary level the contributions of neighborhood volunteers, and actually the Standish-Erickson neighborhood did that with 2 retiring newsletter volunteers. These 2 volunteers had worked for a number of years, and they calculated their time in figuring that they had contributed the equivalent of about $175,000 to the neighborhood. So 2 volunteers, 1 neighborhood, multiply that by 70, not chump change there. Neighborhoods also do their work through community events and tabling. Just about every neighborhood organization hosted a booth or a table at a community event, and a slightly smaller number hosted an issue-specific event, such as open streets. A slightly smaller number hosted a smaller event that was aimed at a targeted audience. The picture we have up here is of a Lynn Bohannon staff and volunteer, and here they're at their ice cream social. But a few months later, they were also at Juneteenth doing outreach to the African American community. We thought it was important to also highlight the work that we do in terms of providing oversight training and support to neighborhood organizations. We provide audits and financial reviews on a rotating basis. We try to have an auditor visit a neighborhood organization at least once every 3 years, and if there's a need, we're there more often. We provide board trainings, learning labs. We help with strategic planning. I should note that these are all undercounts. Like all of you, we talk with neighborhood residents and volunteers on a daily basis, and we find them putting their hearts and souls into this work, and we try to honor that work and do our best to match it. So one of my favorite parts of the annual reports is looking through the highlights that the neighborhoods provide. And this one example is from the Shingle Creek Neighborhood Association. Shingle Creek donated an accessible bicycle to residents at the Camden Care Center, and they were able to use that bicycle in the Tour de Camden bike ride. So, another highlight that we saw in multiple neighborhood reports, and is especially appropriate today, is the work that's being done on renter rights. And as I read this morning's Star Tribune article, I was like, oh, this is perfect. Because Lyndale, of course, has done a lot of work, but Lyndale's not alone. And just kind of reaching out to renters, making sure that renters have a voice, and that it's both the community organizers and leadership programs that are providing opportunities for residents in the neighborhood. Finally, this is at the centerfold of your report, and it shows the highlights presented, a portion of the highlights presented by every single neighborhood association. And to me, at least, I think it shows the range of work and the diversity of work that's being done by our neighborhoods. And I think as a result, the city is a lot richer for it. This concludes our presentation. We would be happy to stand for any questions.
I just have one question. How is this information in this report communicated back to the neighborhood organizations?
Sure. First of all the neighborhood reports are online on our website. We will be sending, and we will be also presenting this report to the neighborhood associations. Figured they give us information. It's important for us to provide feedback.
Excellent. It would be interesting to see what kind of feedback they give about how it might be changed or improved. I know I found it very accessible, and there were some nice metrics, and I appreciated that in there. I know we commented a little bit about the money and looking up about that in the future. It did also occur to me that it might be helpful to understand what the revenue sources, if that makes any sense. So we kind of looked at the total money and the expense areas or whatever, and so that might help clarify it for us up here anyway. That's why I don't see any other questions or comments. So thank you very much for the presentation, and I will move to receive and file the report. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I know we've covered a lot. We still have 3 more things to get done. We're going to move right on to item number 9, and this is going to be, there's 2 different sections. So the first, we're going to look at appointed boards and commissions diversity survey, but item 9 is about the diversity surveys that have been concluded. And We're going to hear from Ms. Cheyenne Rodine. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Gordon, committee members. My name is Cheyenne Brodeen. I am the interim community engagement manager with the Neighborhood and Community Relations Department, and I am before you today to present the findings of the 2016 Appointed Boards and Commissions Diversity Survey, and this is a receive and file item. The city benefits from over 300 volunteers on our boards and commissions, and the Neighborhood and Community Relations Department, the City Clerk's Office, the City Council, and other city departments have been working together since 2009 to increase the diversity on our boards and commissions. Given the city's goal of One Minneapolis, it's imperative that those volunteers serving on our boards reflect the city's demographic. Some of the key findings of the report, diversity in terms of race and ethnicity has increased by 13%. This is the largest increase of this diversity measure since we've been administering this survey. Volunteers serving on our boards and commissions living with a disability mirror the city's demographic by 100%. And we meet 4 of the 7 diversity measures that this report tracks. That's age, income, diversity, and gender. And the applicant pool more closely mirrors the city's demographics than it has in previous years. And however, there is still work to be done on the race, ethnicity, educational attainment, and own versus rent diversity measures. For the 2016 survey, we set a response rate goal of 60%, which we met. 61%. It's lower than in 2014, but still much higher than previous years of 2009 and 2012. As I mentioned, we include 18 of the city's general advisory boards and commissions in the survey. They're listed here on this slide, and they're also included in the report. I won't read them all.
Could you just tell us a little bit why these 18 were selected? We often hear we have up to, I forget if it's 45 or 50.
Sure.
Yeah.
These boards were chosen primarily because of the direct appointments that are made by the mayor and city council. There are other boards such as special service districts, like the audit committee, and a few others that don't necessarily have direct appointments from the mayor and city council. And like special service districts, you'd have to live in a certain geographic area. So we just thought that limiting it to ones that the council and mayor have more control over will allow us to better gauge how we're doing.
Thank you.
And so for the diversity measures that this report tracks, we track age, people with disabilities, education, gender, income, people of color, and own/rent, and sexual identity. I will note that for sexual identity, we don't include it in our dashboard because there is no city benchmark to compare it to. However, it is tracked in the report. For the methodology of the survey, we conduct the survey online and it's voluntary. So any propensity for one demographic to respond to the survey over another isn't tracked in this report, and we don't compare that in the findings. Also, the validity of the survey is based on the response rate, which I said was 61%. For this year, we have, like I said, we have been doing the survey since 2009. However, for 2009 and 2012 surveys, those surveys were sent to a broader scope of respondents over the 18 boards and commissions, so we aren't including them in this report, just the 2014 survey. And I would also like to note that this year, for the 2016 survey, we asked all of the same questions that we had in the previous years, but expanded some of the questions to allow respondents to further identify. An example would be if you identified as African American, you could further identify as being East African or Nigerian, or just allowing people to further identify. And we actually found that this gives us some really good data to use in the future. The demographics of the applicant pool respondents, the city clerk's office has been collecting this data since 2013. Applicants provide a voluntary demographic questionnaire to the clerk's office when they apply. So for this survey, we're using data from years 2015 and 2016, which is 4 application cycles. And the margin of error for all of the questions in the survey is relatively low at about 5.5% to 6% with a 99% confidence level. For the benchmark comparisons that I'll be showing you shortly in the diversity measure dashboard, we divide the survey results by the 2014 American Community Service survey data, and that gives us the benchmark number. So if you had a benchmark of 100%, you would be mirroring the city's demographic. And we also include the Shannon Diversity Index on a number of these diversity measures, and those are diversity measures that have multiple barriers such as age, income, and education. And the Shannon Diversity Index is a formula that takes into account and weights different variables that have multiple options. I wanted to touch briefly on the outreach process. One that we do for outreach on boards and commissions in general in the spring and fall cycle. The Neighborhood and Community Relations Department works with the clerk's office and communications department and other city departments to do a broad outreach on the openings of boards and commissions. Board staff do a lot more outreach individually on their specific boards, but I just wanted to touch on that because it is a lot of work, and we do take it very seriously, all of the outreach to ensure that we're getting diverse applicants. And in terms of outreach for the survey, we worked with the city clerk's office and board staff to pass the survey along to board members. So NCR actually went to a number of board meetings just to share about the survey and offer that people could take it there on paper as well. And I just wanted to point out that board staff really helped a lot in making sure that we met our goal response rate of 60%. They did a lot of work. The diversity measure dashboard is what we use to provide a quick snapshot of how we're doing on our boards and commissions. So those diversity measures that land in the green are within 80% of the city's benchmark, and that we've decided is our target, that is our goal to reach for all of these measures. If the benchmark, or I'm sorry, the diversity measure is in yellow, that's between 40 and 75% of the city benchmark, and we've deemed that that would need attention. And if it's below 39% or 39% or below, that it would be in the red category, and that we've deemed it needs improvement. And here's the diversity measure dashboard for the 2016 survey. As I pointed out, we meet 4 of the 7 diversity measures: age, disability, gender, and income. Education and people of color are in the need attention category, and the own/rent is in the needs improvement category.
So I have a question about this, particularly about the disability category.
Sure.
I was curious. We have an advisory committee with people with disabilities. They were one of the 18, and so they were counted in this.
Correct.
If those individuals, if we took that out of the mix, that all those committee members, would we still be anywhere near as close to 100%?
That's a great question, Chair Gordon. I would have to go back and look at that data. I did not pull that out or prepare that for today.
I think it could be giving us a false impression if we look at this in terms of that. I mean, it's super that those people are participating on that committee.
Sure.
But it doesn't mean that on all our committees that constituency is well represented necessarily. I think it's 11% citywide. So
correct.
one of the 18 committees could be the 11. That's what I was imagining. That's probably our 11% right there. And I wonder we're at 100%. It looks great. It's fantastic on this chart, but I'm just saying,
Sure. Chair Gordon, I will note that if you look at our applicants, so who's applying, we're at 9%. So that I can check into that, but that's
Okay,
something
the
also to
general
consider.
applicants. Okay.
Yeah, correct.
They could be applying for that committee, though.
Correct.
Okay.
I wanted to just touch on the benchmark of the people of color, the city, or the diversity measure. As I stated, we've increased this number by 13% from the previous survey. And another interesting thing to note is that our applicant pool directly mirrors who's sitting on our boards and commissions. So our applicant pool is 29% people of color, and that is who our people seated on our boards and commissions is 24% people of color.
So the box is
I'm sorry,
and this
29.
I think this is fantastic progress and fantastic news. I remember last time we had a report, we heard about how we were getting more applicants, but we still weren't seeing the difference. So this 13%, it's helpful. This is an interesting way to look at it too. Kind of what we're saying is our benchmark that we think would be reflective of the city is the black boxes. And then the colored bars are what we actually have serving on our boards and commissions, just to clarify what that means. Thanks.
And this is just a comparison of a breakdown of our race and of the race and ethnicity of people serving on our boards and commissions. I will note that if you look at this, the bar that is 12% is that of 2 or more races. If you look at the American Indian and the Hispanic and Latino origin categories, we found that when we gave the option for people to further identify, those that identified as Hispanic and Latino origin and Native American further identified as another race. So they're lumped into the 2 or more race category. And moving on, this is, we wanted to also just share information about the own/rent diversity measure. This is our only red diversity measure that needs improvement. And one thing I wanted to point out that's a positive note for this measure is that our applicant pool shows that 41% of people applying to our boards and commissions are renters. So looking to the future, we have a good opportunity to increase that benchmark. And I will note that I think a lot for the work that we're doing on outreach, there's a lot of outreach to renters happening in the department, in neighborhoods, and across the city. So I think there's a lot of positive improvement we'll see with this benchmark moving forward. And as I previously stated, sexual identity isn't tracked in our benchmark, or our dashboard, but we do track it in the report. So 85% of our seated board members identified as being straight or heterosexual, 14% identified as being as gay, lesbian, bisexual, queer, and 1% identified as asexual. Some additional findings of the survey relate to orientation that is provided to seated board and commission members. 69% of survey respondents indicated that they received orientation after being seated on boards and commissions. From those 69% of respondents, 26% indicated that they received training from the city clerk's office, and 88% indicated that they received training from the staff person or department who staffs their board or commission. And I will note that those people could receive training from both the city clerk's office and the city department. One more additional finding is related to concurrent appointments. This measure has stayed relatively the same as the previous survey. This is something that we want to keep our eye on and watch. The less concurrent appointments we'll give us more opportunity for more people to sit on our boards and commissions. Some of the recommendations we're proposing as the outcomes of the survey. We want to develop specific outreach plans for renters, youth, and lower income residents in Minneapolis. We'd also like to focus our attention on recruiting more applicants of racial diversity and a broader range of educational attainment. We'd also like to leverage and better coordinate existing city programs, such as the One Minneapolis Fund, Community Innovation Fund, and City Academy, to focus those more on leadership development. We'd also like to incorporate a track for the 2017 Community Connections Conference on specifically boards and commissions. And we would like to develop ongoing training for staff that staff boards and commissions on cultural competency and unconscious bias. We'd like to review the spring and fall cycle with the city clerk's office to make sure that it's working for us and meeting our needs. And we would like to work with the city council to appoint more renters. As I previously stated, we have an applicant pool of 41% of individuals applying. So I think that's something that, like I said, we can move that benchmark higher.
Councilmember Glidden has a comment or question.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the thorough presentation. It was very good information, and it's good to kind of see how many years have we received this report now?
Since 2009, this is the fourth survey report.
Okay, so it's really, I think, also great to kind of get the trajectory and how the information is changing and how you're getting a little bit more sophisticated and what to do with it. I love that you have adopted into the report some recommendations that are part of the next steps. And I think it also just shows that the work is bearing fruit. Just a couple of comments that I wanted to share. One is that I appreciate there's a recommendation in here that talks about connecting with the city staff that support the boards and commissions. I don't want us to kind of underestimate how important those staff members are in how we need to support that infrastructure in terms of what are kind of the major messages that they're then able to share with their chairs and their members that they support in terms of how the appointments process feeds into the importance of the work of those boards and commissions. So I just wanted to kind of reemphasize that. I don't know what kind of training and support that you're giving to them around this report, but encouraging them even with some additional tools of how they might continue to repeat the messages that relate even to their particular board or commission, how they keep that information about the commission in front of the chair or others who are, again, supporting that appointments process, I think is helpful. The other thing I just wanted to put out there is I don't know if at some point you might do some evaluation of, this is more like a point of curiosity on my part, but what boards and commissions, what styles of appointments seem to, over a period of time, reflect boards that kind of are gaining in diversity and kind of more reflective of the community as a whole, and which boards and commissions where that seems to be more challenging. I don't know if